California's first of its kind Food Safety Act bans 4 chemicals found in candy, cereal, salad, dressings, and other processed foods. In this week's Wellness Wednesday, I looked into what had voters so concerned.
I can't understand why anyone would want these heavily processed foods. They add so much to food that is not food.
Starting in 2027, propylparaben, brominated vegetable oil, potassium bromate, and red dye number 3 cannot be used in food products sold throughout California. That's 3 years away, and many people have no idea what foods contain them. Are you one of those people where you look at the label and you know the names of all those crazy chemicals they put in there?
I certainly don't know the names because they really try to disguise them, and so we can't even pronounce them or we don't understand them. But I definitely do run through the ingredients list when I make any purchase.
Potassium bromate is used to strengthen dough. Brominated vegetable oil is added to citrus-flavored drinks. Propylparaben is a preservative used in baked goods and trail mixes.
Propylparaben, what were some of the health concerns associated with that one?
That one is some of the concerns for all of them really were around cancer and or hormonal disruption.
Red dye number 3 colors candies like Peeps.
That one's been linked quite a bit, somewhat to cancer, but also to behavioral issues.
3 out of the 4 chemicals are already banned in 27 nations in the European Union.
They look at it differently than we do. We look at it on a risk base. So basically that means what's the risk versus the benefit? What's the benefit of having a good color in a food versus the risk of somebody developing, behavioral issues from eating what the FDA considers from studies a reasonable amount of the food.
The assemblyman who sponsored the bill says the FDA isn't paying close enough attention.
When I learned that 99% of these chemicals are not being independently reviewed by the FDA, that was my aha moment.
So I reached out to the nonprofit Institute of Food Technologists, or IFT, to find out why.
The normal person like me who is not a scientist, we don't have any idea what potassium bromate or these weird chemical words, like how really do we know? How do we know it's safe?
I think you have to trust in the food supply that it is safe because we do have an incredibly strong regulatory framework coming from the FDA that's outlined our food safety for years, and we have one of the safest food supplies in the world.
Is it one of those things where companies are supposed to self-report problems, or is there some sort of governing from our government looking out and being proactive from the government to make sure these companies aren't putting something dangerous and then not telling us?
The FDA does have regulatory oversight over all food products and all ingredients, and there are absolutely standards on what are the food additives and the ingredients that are being included.
I asked her if the IFT supports California's new ban.
State level actions are one way that consumers' voices are being heard. So even though these actions we believe should be evidence-based and should be science-based, right? So looking at the totality of the science, not just 1, 2, or even 3 studies, but looking at the consumption patterns, the actual intake, etc.
Basically, the FDA is okay with these chemicals, but in our state at least, some of these food companies are going to have to change their recipes, and it could mean higher prices.
We talk about, say, a color, right, which doesn't enhance the flavor or how long a product lasts. How could that possibly increase food costs?
When you're talking about changing a formula, that increases food costs. Or if you're talking about having potentially different formulas in different states, that could increase food costs.
Some say their family safety is worth it.
It's definitely worth it when you think about all the things that we ingest and think the chemicals that we're exposed to every day. So it's definitely worth it to try to limit that exposure as much as possible.
The heavily processed foods should be very expensive because that's what they're really using. It's more manufacturing process. These foods that people need to eat that are not processed, that are organic, all of those things can make a difference to the health, and I think that we're going to be finding that out for years and years to come.
Initially, Skittles were included on that list. Skittles contain titanium dioxide, which is used to add whiteness to foods like candies and dairy products. The bill in its original text would have banned titanium dioxide, but that was removed by an amendment.